Welcome to the August-September version of our artist demonstration. This is the Society of West Coast Artists. My name is Jim Stinger, and I am the president of the San Francisco chapter of the Society of West Coast Artists. We also have a San Joaquin Valley chapter, and there are members of the San Joaquin Valley chapter out there in the valley. We are a membership-based organization, and we are all volunteer, so we can always use help. We can always use members. So if you're not a member, please consider joining. You can go to our website, societyofwest-coastartists.com, and you can fill out a membership application there. Today, for our artist demonstration, we are pleased to have Paul Kratter, who's an oil painter. And I'd like to give you a little bit more information about him and introduce him in the way of an introduction, and then I'll turn the microphone over to him. So I have a quote that I'd like to start with. Paint long enough and it becomes obvious as to which artists are truly connected to their work. Those who are devoted to quality and continuous improvement. Paul Kratter is one such artist. His dedication to working from direct observation, connection to fellow artists, and focus on hard work have put him at the top of his game. That's a quote from Matt Smith, who's an American artist. Paul Kratter's paintings embody the light, atmosphere, and emotion that only an accomplished artist can convey. Paul, along with many experienced fine art painters, comes from an illustration background that instills strong drawing and design skills and a robust belief in graphic shapes and storytelling. This is prevalent in Paul's work as a skillful and accomplished landscape artist. As a young child, Paul loved to draw. It was an entry into the San Francisco Chronicle's weekly drawing contest and a subsequent win that verified he was an artist.
Yes.
His prize, a ticket to the San Francisco Zoo, inspired his love for animals and ignited his lifelong passion to represent them in his art. So I will now pass the microphone over to Paul. Please
Click.
Okay, what you're going to do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a little weird here having an audience. It's a bigger audience that's not here. There must be 1,000 of you out here, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm a little nervous because I have never done a workshop for 1,000 or a demo for 1,000 people. But thank you for the introduction, and that is my favorite award. Was this first thing that I won when I was a little kid. I'm sure they just drew my name out of the hat, but it meant a lot to me. Yes, I was an illustrator for 22 years, and drawing, composition, and value are really, really important to me. We were up in the Sierras 7-8 years ago, and a couple of buddies of mine were doing sketches for every painting, Terry Mira and Bill Cohn. And I go, why aren't I doing that? So I've been filling up sketchbooks. We just got back from the Eastern Sierras, but I can show you guys and the audience. I do this for almost every painting. Sometimes just the light's moving too fast, or whatever, you just can't. But these are fairly fast. They can be 2-minute sketches. They can be 10-minute sketches. But this, obviously, I'm working on the values. I'm working on the composition. I'm working on editing. What do I want in the illustration or in the painting, and what is not necessary? Sometimes I'm moving stuff around. This saves me so much time. And even on Facebook the other day, somebody wrote and said, "What pen do you use?" And it's like, I have a secret pen, and it's right here. And it's a very expensive UPS pen that I get for free. And I can be sarcastic and whatever. The tools that you use, whether they're expensive or cheap, it doesn't really matter. This is a cheap pen. This is just a sketchbook. It's not, it has good paper, but it doesn't really matter. There's no secret color or a secret paintbrush that's going to make you paint better. So just for the sake of getting through this a little bit faster, I just did an outline of the painting I'm going to do today, which is very similar. I didn't put any of the values in it, but it's very similar to this one, which is this painting. So I'm kind of using this as a somewhat of a guide. And what I also have done on here, it's a little hard to see. There's a little pencil drawing on here. So I've drawn it once here, I've drawn it once here, and I'm going to draw it again in paint. So that's 3 times that I've drawn something that I'm familiar with. And it's really important. That shows you how important it is for me with the paint, not only just, painting and whatnot, but getting the drawing right. I always put this down at my feet so I can see, I could refer to things. So let's say the light's changing. We're indoors here, but a lot of what I do is outdoor work. And where's my paper towel? And the light might change, or you might have a shadow that's on a piece of architecture and it starts changing. Oh, what do I do now? But if your sketch is fairly accurate, you can follow what you've done in your sketch. So I mix up a brown color, just blue and orange together. And somebody just asked me, is this Lake Adiza, which I was just at. It is in the Eastern Sierras. Beautiful place, kind of out of Mammoth ski resort area. We've been going with this group called the Granite Group for, I think, 18 years now. And on this past trip, one of the women who lives, I know you guys know Ellen Howard, was supposed to go with us, and she did, until she fell off her horse 200 yards from our campsite, like a 7-mile hike or ride in, and hit her head and had to go back out because she needed stitches. So we felt so bad. We still had fun, but what a terrible way to start for her and for the rest of us. So I'm doing a fairly fast drawing again. I'm looking at my subject matter. If I were out in the field, I would be examining this and what do I need to move around? Is this the right scale? I'm making a lot of different observations as I paint. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people just start painting and they're not observing enough of what they're seeing. What's that? 1,000 people can't see. We're taking a commercial break.
Yes.
This hour is sponsored by Sennelier Paints. I won't do anything important until we're. This is to get my better side, right? So that's one of the things when I'm teaching. Sometimes I'll come up behind somebody and watch them, and I don't see them looking up at the subject enough. I see them look up there and then they start painting, and what are you doing? And well, I'm painting trees. And yeah, but they don't look like what's up there. And you're not really observing the shapes as much as you could. By the way, please ask questions. You don't learn anything. You can, but you're going to learn more if you are curious about something. I don't understand why you're doing it this way. I was always taught to do this. So just ask away. And art should be fun. And I've had my disasters. I've been mad at my paintings, mad at what I was doing, but I still have fun, and I'll get to a certain point and step back and go, nailed it. And it's just, I'm happy. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying the process, even if it's difficult. And it's not a science, obviously. All right. So this is a stage where I do step back just really quickly and look at it and say, do I see anything that looks out of place? And I'm pretty much copying my drawing. So if it was good, then it should be still good at this point. But sometimes you can catch mistakes. I usually start with the shadow areas of what I'm painting. If I'm painting something that the light's changing really quickly, some area goes into light really quick, and I know maybe it's going to go behind a cloud, I may paint that area first. So it's not always, especially outdoors, it can be a little bit more, it can be a lot more challenging than when you've had your coffee and your donuts and whatnot in the studio. So I'm using brights. I just like they're like a flat, but they have a little stubbier hairs, and they just work for me. And I see the world. Eric Rhodes from Plein magazine had said, what do you consider yourself? You're an impressionist, right? And I am, but I really consider myself a designer of shapes. That is what I see first when I'm painting. And it's when people are watching this and it looks like magic, and well, it is magic. When you're at a certain level, when I watch people play instruments, I love listening to music, but I don't understand at all how somebody writes a song. And so I totally, when I'm in awe of watching people perform, I get when people say, I don't get how you come up with these ideas and paint and put it down on paper or board. And I get that. A friend of mine, Tim Horn, on his card, it says, I paint so you don't have to. And okay, that's a pretty clever. So I'm always thinking, where is the light coming from? It's coming from the left-hand side. This is an early morning or some sort of morning painting. This particular scene, we got up there and it was, this year it was pretty overcast and rained at night. But we really got a break weather-wise because it was supposed to rain a lot more than it did. Any questions so far? Yeah, this is it's a sap green with a little, there's blue in it and a little bit of red to neutralize the green. So on the monitor, it might just look like just a dark value. And that's what I'm seeing first. I'm seeing the value, not the color quite as much. Sure. Yeah. There's no overhead camera, but
No, it shows your back.
wow. Okay, so this is India yellow orange, cad orange, cad red, alizarin crimson, dioxazine violet, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue. I have King's blue, which I usually use as a cool gray for a mixer. I don't really need that color. I have sap green and titanium white. And most people look at this and go, this is I have a yellow orange on here, and I usually don't squirt out yellow anymore. And I just found I wasn't using it. If you add white to it, you're going to cool it down. If I don't quite have that color, if I can't quite make what I want out of it, I do have like a cad yellow, a Turner yellow is the one I use. People ask, why do you have these specific colors? Because they're pretty. It sounds sarcastic. They're just pretty colors. I like them, but they're also very potent colors. Mostly Sennelier, but I don't. They make beautiful colors, but I don't like everything. So Gamblin makes a better sap green, but Sennelier makes these beautiful. They're expensive, beautiful colors. All right, so that's kind of the green passage. I've these holes in here are really where the light's coming from. I'm going to go back, and sometimes it just reads better if I go ahead and put the light side and the shadow side together side by side. It's kind of fun because especially when you're out in nature and you're outdoors, you can have a plan of how you want to work. And sometimes you go, no, you know what, today I'm going to work back to front. I'm going to work in this area. I can't resolve this right now. I'm having trouble. So I'm going to work someplace else. And it's good to be flexible. I never was at art school. I wasn't so much as a illustrator, but I've learned that with plein air painting. So I'm trying to get about in this composition about 1/3 light, 2/3, maybe even 1/4 light, 3/4 shadow. So I have some dramatic lighting. And so rather than what I want to avoid is 50% shadow, 50% light. It's just it's boring. And I don't have to see it. I'm not even looking at my photo reference here, but these trees may be casting a shadow on these trees. And maybe this is also, I may put a little bit of light on this side, but the more you can tell the audience where your light source is coming from, the more your painting is about the light that you're seeing. The other thing that's important with landscape painting, a lot of people want to go and lighten and keep lighting the light side of the trees. And most of the time, your vertical elements, meaning trees, are the darkest element in the painting. They're not getting as much light from the sun. And so if you can make those read as a silhouette first, you can still have light and shadow on them. But when you step back, the impact of them, you should see a pattern of one of your darkest elements in your piece. And so that's a lot of times, again, I'm backing up to see, do I see a ridge line of trees there first and not just the light and shadow side? Does that make sense? Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, Professor Paul. So I'm going to put these rocks in shadow, and I'm using the purple and some yellow orange in here. I'm using the complement. It's a little bit light, but it's not that far off. I'm going to put a little contact shadow where it's going to hit the grass. Going to beef up the core, meaning right where the light changes to shadow is the darkest edge. And you might have reflected light bouncing up in there. Other nuances. One of the things in my work that I like to work on is struggling with one area there. What's the reward when you come up and look at my piece? Usually I want my pieces to be fairly dramatic, have good lights, good darks, it could, whatever it happens to be. Then when you come up very close to the piece, what do you see? Is it the texture of my brush strokes? Is it color shifts and color nuances? And those are all kinds of things that you know, the texture of the paint, how thick it is. It might be how the direction of your paint, your brush strokes. Those are all things that you might not see from far away, but when you get up and you go, oh, there's all kinds of little color shifts in here, which gives your painting a little more interest and fun and some sophistication. Fun. I was doing a demo once in Carmel, and I was doing a really crappy job. And I started off and said, okay, this is $50 right now. And then I got $75 and then $80 and then $100. And everybody's looking at me like, that's crappy. I got up to like $125 and I started going back down. And I said, please, somebody I'll give you $50 if you take it away from me. And what happened was my painting was about 90% shadows. And until I put the last 10% light in, it just didn't read very well. And it was my mistake for not picking such a challenging piece to paint as a demo. And somebody goes, oh, it's really neat to see you fail, because it doesn't happen very often. I was like, I don't even know if that's a compliment or not, but yeah, but it is. And as I said afterwards, it's not science. You can't do a great painting every time out. I want to do, especially for a demo, people are paying to take a class or something. And it's like, oh God, I'm not going to say I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I was just bad today. Now, even in the photo, I'm not seeing these shadows come across here, but who's to say there isn't a tree right here or a ridge line of rocks or something, and the sun is down here is being blocked by this ridge, and that might make for a much more interesting painting. And that's what this was, a kind of an overcast day, and the sun would come out just briefly, but these rocks caused the shadow. They weren't exactly here. They were in the scene. They were just moved over. They were over here, and I chose to push them over. And then I thought, oh, this is a good kind of lead in, is to have this shadow and then have this light source coming across here.
You have a preferred time of day?
I like morning stuff better. I'm an early morning riser. Late in the afternoon, I think it's easy for me. It's easier to paint when the light's great, and late in the afternoon, it just keeps getting better and better. The shadows get longer and longer, and you go, oh, I got to make my shadows longer. I got to make my, the tones warmer. But but you can even see the value of on the rocks and the lights. I have not even put those in. I haven't put the light in the grass in here, and yet it reads already. You can tell what's, you know, that the light is fairly strong. I don't know what this shape was. Yeah, I don't change anything. Who asked that? Yeah, do I change my palette when I'm painting animals? No. The one thing that's different when I'm doing my wildlife, I've been working on old highway signs or pieces of metal. They've been really I don't, as much as I love animals in their environment, there's a lot of people that really know that stuff well, and I'm kind of concentrating on doing animals, kind of portraits, and the texture of their skin or their fur, feathers. And to me, I'm a little bit more free to experiment with, even though they're tighter. It's just a little, I want them to be different than this. And I even sign them Paul Kratter, and I sign these just Kratter. I don't want to be, I'm not a different person, but I just wanted them to be kind of separate. And it's funny, we've gone to this location, I think it's our 6th year, and I stood in some of the same places I've always stood to paint. And there's nothing wrong with going back to a familiar place, or, I mean, Monet did it and countless other artists, but something that, you know, is there's nothing wrong with having that familiarity about what you're painting. And then, but it is fun to go out and find something different that you've been walking, like in the Eastern Sierras. My friend Bill and I, who put these trips together, we'd walk by something. We've been here 6 times in a row, or 6 times over the years. We keep walking by this little place, and it finally hit us. This is a paintable subject. So I'm trying to get some atmosphere. I've added a little blue purple. It's a little different than the ones down here. The light, it's more that the light side, the light side will be closer in value to the shadow side, so that it gets pushed back, and that'll be a little more clear as I get a little further along.
You sometimes exaggerate the lightness and coolness of the background to create more depth.
Oh yeah, you're almost always, you're going to get a little bit cooler mountains or hills as they go back. I like what I see in nature, but I tend to paint fairly warm. So I tend to just shift everything just a tad bit warmer, but I pick areas that I like. I like the colors and stuff. So I'm not, if it looks good to me already, then it's always going to have my bent on how I see certain colors, but it's also, I picked it because I like the neutral grays and whatnot that are usually found in that scene. So that's a little cooler and a little further back. I mean, that's not a huge jump, but that's giving you some of this atmosphere here. There's also some trees going back into space here. I'm going to mix up a ultramarine blue with a little green, a little red. But it's going to be a little bit darker than the shadow side of the rock formations here. And I'm trying not to see that there are 25 trees. A friend of mine will come over sometimes. You miss one of the trees, there's 27 and you only have 26. And I think some people really are, they're not counting, but they're being too fussy. And I try to see, and that's one thing, you know, with a bigger brush, you can't render as much. And so you're trying to simplify those shapes as best you can. It's nice when you're painting and you, okay, it's coming along. I don't have to make excuses like having a bad day. It's not working out. Oh, thank you. It's pretty quiet for 1,000 people being in this room.
Here's a question.
Oh, good.
Are you using a canvas board or panel?
It's a linen panel. So it's mounted, these are it comes from New Tradition Art Panels. There's other places that make these. These are really lightweight on gator board, but basically foam core. And then sometimes these cost a little bit more. I don't know if he still makes them on maple panels, and they're a little bit stiffer and they're beautiful. I think oil-based, but I don't know. I'm not well versed in like mediums and the quality of the paint. Like I said, you know, why do you like these colors? Because they're pretty. You know, I don't know if somebody said, do you paint with synthetic brushes? And I don't know. It doesn't say. So if it works, it works. It's funny, when I was an illustrator, my roommate would come by, you know, all the time, and I'd be halfway through a painting. He'd go, "You're done, aren't you?" No, I got to render everything. I got to put all these details in and stuff. And here I am now. I thought he was an idiot for for thinking I was done already. And and here now I'm trying to leave unfinished areas or not fully result there. Everything's finished, but not to the same degree and not to the same rendered effect everywhere. I want it to be expressive, and you know, what mistakes I make, you know, I try to correct, but sometimes just the spontaneity of what you're painting, you'll have an area and go, it's not my favorite, but it's what I was feeling at the time, and what I could get done in that time frame.
Another question from Chad. Do you add white to lighten?
Yes. So do I add white to lighten? Unless you're doing something transparent, you have to, but white tends to be cooler. So usually if I'm adding white to something and it's in a warm area, I'm probably going to add a little bit of yellow orange to it to compensate for that, the coolness that it might have. That was really evident in when I did illustration and worked in acrylics, that as soon as you added white to something, it really became chalky, and it was such a revelation to switch to oil paint and have this much creamier color and richness to it that acrylics didn't have at that time. They certainly make better acrylics now that act and look like oils a lot more.
I think if the trees, much more than is that the way you normally start or you don't start from this first the way you work forward to start?
It depends. If there's a lot of atmosphere, I almost always start from the back to the front because it's really key to get that furthest landmass, let's say, in. If it's I can almost always guarantee that a piece like this, I painted the entire sky first, all completed all the way, not three quarters, because the clouds are moving. And the key that I do is I design in my sketchbook, the clouds, and I follow the sketch, even though the clouds are moving, the color and the value probably isn't. So that, to me, that's something that has really helped in my painting, is kind of identify what's going to change the most that I need to capture now. This is fairly harmonious. I did clean up a little bit of where the trees were here. But these color shifts are not huge. And one of the things that I'm just I can see some of my other colors underneath here, but I'm not cleaning my brush that well, and I'm not cleaning this area that well. So there's a fine line between having really nice gray colors and neutral colors and dirty colors. And I don't, sometimes you look at painting, I'm not going to look in here, but you'll look at something, those are just kind of muddy colors. And sometimes it just means if you're thinking about cooler colors, maybe a little bit more ultramarine blue or cobalt blue in that gray mass will bring a little richness of color to it. Or if it's on the warm side, you just add a little more orange to it, and all of a sudden it just has a better feel and color sense to it. This is the shadow from coming off of this piece of rock. So I can just feel my eyes scanning everything. You're always making these adjustments, and some of it's messy a little bit, but I like that feel. Not that it's messy, but that it's rougher. I remember I was painting a scene up in Sonoma, and there was a road that curved around, and the curve had a nice some beautiful shadows from the trees coming across, and I could not render it. I'm just beating it up, and it was frustrating. So I worked on the rest of the painting, and I came back to it and I scraped it out. And what took me 15 minutes, then I could do in 5 minutes. And it's like, why am I correcting it, putting another brushstroke down and beating up a good painting? And why can't I just, and it wasn't a revelation, but it felt good to scrape it out and go, okay, start over, but I'm going to work on the rest of while I'm frustrated, that would not be a good time to be, trying to fix something. It was, work on the rest of it and just kind of, I'm going to ignore that. I'm not going to look at that bad part of the painting. So with the white paint, when you get to the opaques, the paint is a little bit thicker. And so it has a little bit more body to it, and it covers a little bit quicker. And so it's not a huge change, but there is thick and thin paint in this. And that's another thing when somebody comes up and looks at the painting, is, oh, I like the texture that you got. I like the thickness you got in the lightest areas of the painting. And that's just happening with the adding white to the paint. So the mountains back here, the snow is white, but it's pretty far back in the distance, and it really isn't white. Actually, in this time of year, there's an algae that grows on it that's a little bit reddish. And if I just mixed a bright white, it would really jump out. So it's got to have some value to it, some, obviously a light tone, but not a big, not too bright white. This blue seems kind of foreign, and it's probably because the sky, there's no blue sky in this painting. So you have this snow field in shadow doesn't have anything to relate to. I'm hoping that. I'll put a light side also on the rocks. And I'm mixing up a white with a little of the cat orange, a little bit of the India yellow orange. And I clean look how dirty my paper towel is. So when I clean it, it's not really clean. It's just wiping it so it's fresh.
There is a question in the chat.
Yeah, I'm married.
What color do you add to snow?
I'll be smart ass for a moment. Terry Mira, I don't know if you know his work. Somebody asked him, Terry, what are you going to use for snow? And he went over and got his white paint and held it up, and he'd written on it Snow White. So it's I'm using Snow White. It's just titanium white, and like I said, it's going to be a little brighter if it's closer to us, but it's pretty far away. And that's the one thing with photography. There's a certain amount that the camera can produce, but your eyes are so much more in tune when if you're a plein air painter and you're looking at something, and your eyes can dilate to look into a shadow area or a light area. They can open up to look into a shadow area. And it's really, that's one of the things that people love about painting outdoors, is that you really are in tune with nature, and you're seeing some fantastic colors that and there's a place for cameras. I can't, if I want to do some studio work from all this, I want reference material, but my plein air paintings serve a lot of good there too. So I also want to get some cloud shapes in here. What did I? These are mostly kind of hazy clouds where they're not the big billowing, it might rain, later in the day kind of stuff, but it could be that way later, but not right now. And then I'm going to put some blue tones. This is a kind of a again, I hardly clean my brush, but a cobalt and ultramarine blue together. I used to be very hard edged with my clouds, and my wife came in and said, they're too, she's an artist also. They're too hard edged. You know, when you're, some of those big cumulus clouds are, it seems like they have, you know, real crisp edges, but they might be 6, 7, 8 miles away. And if you soften them up, you'll push them back further. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Hate it when she's right.
The closer it is to the foreground, the sharper it is.
Yeah. Your eye goes to the sharpest contrast, the greatest contrast and the sharpest edges. So I'm very careful going back here, you know, pushing this element the furthest back, this one the next, and these can be sharper in here because that's how you're going to see things. Time-wise, we're doing pretty good. This is really typical of what how I would work in the field, fairly fast. And if I was with friends, I'd be the one usually chat. But then you also have this quiet time where we always settle down and you're concentrating. It's hard. It is hard work. But this is the time that if I was teaching a class, I'd say, John, Joan, you know, whoever, stand up, get back, look at your piece, and what is it that's working? What isn't working? Do you need to make any shifts? I kind of have these two about equal space. This shape is about the same as that. I didn't notice it up here. And I'll tell you I took a workshop with Matt Smith, and I had put in a reflected light down in here. I was so proud of it. It was a little 1/2 inch orange light. And he came up and he goes, Paul, and it's like, yeah, I know he's going to point to it. And he goes, take that out. I'm like, take that out. That's my favorite brush stroke. And he goes, it's too warm. He says, your value is right, but you need cool it down. And he goes, sneak up on your reflected light. It's like that's always stuck with me when I paint. So sometimes you take these workshops and you get, you know, loads and loads of information and great stuff. And sometimes it's just one or two little things that might be keys to you know, moving forward in that's what am I doing? Now that got muddy, but I can fix it. Just want to put a little kind of shadow side on the clouds too. I don't love it, but so this, for me, this is a really key point to, okay, I fixed something that I didn't like. You know, that's the whole idea of stepping back with any painting. You know, you get to, it's 9 o'clock at night, you're dead tired, you've been working on something, and maybe in the morning you get up and you look at it with fresh eyes, or you turn it upside down, or you go to the mirror and look at it. So you're not just concentrating on something that's up this close. And this is like, okay, I fixed the thing I didn't like, and now I'm pretty happy. And now I can slow down a little bit more. And I blocked in everything that the light, I have the right light captured on this. And now I can be more concerned about my brush strokes and my nuances and things that make my art hopefully unique. So I go back usually in the same way I just started. The shadow areas of the trees were where I started. So I'm going to do that again. And usually when you're outdoors, by now it's dried just a little. It's just a little less tacky. And the second layer of paint goes on really pretty smoothly. I do like to rotate the brush. Sometimes I'm holding it like this. When I first started drawing on here, I was probably holding it like this. And at some point, I usually switch just to give some variety of how I'm holding the brush, to give me a little different brush stroke out of it. Yeah. It's funny, I can walk up to somebody. I just had this happen at a workshop, but it's happened multiple times. And I don't even see the person's painting, but I see how they're holding their brush, how they're standing at their easel, and it's like, you know what you're doing? Yeah, your painting's really good. Well, how did you know? You didn't even see it. And I can just tell by the way, and you can tell certain athletes that, young kids, let's say, that they just know what they're doing. They're just the way they hold their bodies and their attitude and stuff. They've got it. So I'm always analyzing what I'm painting, and I will I'll look at a photograph, or I'll be on location. What looks wrong? What's out of place? What doesn't read real well? And I remember at Art Center, I had my illustration. I put it up on the wall, and the teacher came over and says, "I don't understand what's going on here." And I said, "Oh, I'll get my photograph." And he goes, "I don't care what's in your photograph. Your painting has to stand on its own." And it's just like this. Even if you were out in nature and there was a bent over tree that had a really weird look to it, you're even crinkling your nose, going, "Yeah, that doesn't look right." Well, if it doesn't look right in real life, it's probably going to look even odder. And people can still paint, strange objects. That's not a never ever do this, but that's a safe bet to say if it looks weird, it's going to be weird. That was a great expression, by the way. But you can see that just adding a little bit more, the first round of paint was fairly thin and streaky, and the second go around is much more solid. And I really want this passage, this diagonal passage of trees. And what's also important is that there's some variety in how tall some of these are. I might have one that's a bad example, but that might be bent over a little bit. They don't all are perfect. There might be a dead tree in here with just its main trunk and a few branches coming out. mean, that's all part of nature that makes, you know, this, let's say, this particular area unique. Any other questions from the television audience?
None from online, no.
Then it's story time. Um, so we were in the Eastern Sierras. This is 6-7 years ago, and not at this place, but real close by. And we were hiking out last day, and I turned to my buddy and I go, "It's amazing. No one's ever got hurt on one of these trips." And sure enough, half an hour later, I was stepping down a pretty steep area. I had my art pack on, so that weighs about 40 pounds, and all my weight went down on my knee. I stepped down about this far and dislocated my kneecap, and it was 3 inches above where it's supposed to be, and it hurt. And there's I hadn't seen it in a while, but there's one photograph I have a hard time looking at. I'm not a queasy person, but you could just tell I was in pain. But I was with my friends, and they did the best they could. And fortunately, somebody had a satellite radio. They put out an SOS, and it comes back, and you just get a text message. Waiting for a helicopter may take 5 hours, 4.5 hours. Ah, geez, they're reading this to me, and I'm laying there like, no drugs, the pack mules couldn't go on this part of the trail, blah, blah, blah. And this woman, I may tear up, but there's a funny side to it, has her hand on my heart, and she goes, "No matter where I'm at, my hands will always be on your heart." And that's a really sentimental, sweet thing to say. And then my other friend goes, "Polly, what can I do for you?" And I go, "You can kiss me." And she goes, "Okay." And she kisses me here. And I go, "Oh no, right here." She kisses me there. And then this other woman's massaging my good leg. And she goes, "Polly, what can I do for you?" I'm milking this. "You can pull my finger." And I'm laughing now. And she pulls my finger, and I just start farting. I can't. The more I laugh, the more I fart. And there's another beautiful woman on the trip there that's next to me. And my buddy goes, "Paul, why are you always surrounded by beautiful women?" So that was my sentimental, sweet, funny part of the story. But this badass woman shows up, 4.5 hours later in a helicopter, and completely takes control and says, "We're going to have to move you and straighten your leg, because you're going to have to go in the helicopter, and you might spin if your leg isn't equal with your other one." And I go, "You can't touch it." She goes, okay, I get it, don't worry." And so they put me in a basket. They carry me across a creek bed, finally, where the helicopter could come and pick me up. And once I was on drugs, I was just fine. And it was our 34th wedding anniversary, which you're never going to forget. And I had gone to Tiffany's, and I had bought my wife a nice ring. And I gave it to her like the night before we left, because I always come back and I smell, I haven't shaved and all that. I'm grubby. And she goes, "I didn't even get you anything." And I said, "I don't care. I know you love me." And so that's where we spent our anniversary. And 3 days later, a woman had been rescued out of the Sierras alive. She was with her group. She got separated, fell, broke her leg, but was crawled to water. And they found her 9 days later, and the same helicopter service rescued her. And they said she may have lasted half a day or a day at the most. And I can't imagine, I wasn't going to die. I was with my friends. They weren't going to leave me. But she had to think, I'm not going to live. It had to cross her mind, I would think. So was it bad? When people said, "Oh, you were so lucky," it's like, no, I was not lucky. The rest of the group was, but I get what you mean. But this woman really, I can't imagine what she endured. So I'm trying to get some of these smaller little trees, and it's even okay to indicate they're all in light. Sometimes that happens. They're a little more transparent. But I'm trying to get the left side here with just a little bit of light. And I don't want to go too strong with the value change, or I lose the impact that this is a silhouette. I don't care for this particular tree here. It got a little blobby. Oh, yay, good.
When you talk about how you paint and challenging weather like wind, excessive heat,
Be prepared. So one thing I do have, these are great. And I used them on this trip. The wind came up. And I have 3 tent stakes and 3 bungee cords. And if you're on grass or somewhere that you can pound it into the ground, your easel won't blow over. It may jiggle, but it's not. And I've had it blow over where it's so windy, and you're kind of holding it, and you're going, I gotta get some paint. No, I can't do it. And you're kind of doing this thing, and this is just a nice thing to have. Obviously, if it's hot, you got to have water. Painting in the shade is obviously preferred. I don't like umbrellas. This is a fairly wiggly kit, and I've never had good luck with umbrellas. Obviously, dressing warmly or in layers. But I think also mine has fallen off. The end of the tripod usually has a hook, and sometimes you can put your kit underneath here, or they have a little basket and you can put rocks in there. Those are all good things to have. Sounds like somebody is an adventurous painter or wants to be.
enjoyed listening and watching you paint and learning a lot of good techniques and how to use the colors. Various colors.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'll show you in just a sec. These are just spring-loaded. And I think I love this company, but it's gone, I think it's out of, their website came down. This is Open Box M, but these are spring-loaded. So what's nice is I have it marked on here. Oops. And I just slide these into place. And then this is a fixed side, and this is a spring-loaded. Pretty easy.
Under solid box that's like a camera flip on it, you just flip it on the camera to the Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah. So I have a ball joint, and on the camera tripod, it had, I think, just a fixed joint, whatever. But the ball joint allows me, let's say I'm on uneven surface, and I can tilt this any direction because of the ball joint and just tighten it down. It does. There's another one for left and right stuff, but that's to me, that's a real key element to have, for your painting kit. I use a utility blade to scrape the paint off. I should have more paper towels. I managed to not use very many. What's that? Oh, I still have some. I just don't, I have them. I just don't use enough of them. Okay, I'm going to do the shadow of the mountain. No, it's just a camera tripod. It's Pro Master. So like 125, 150 bucks, somewhere in there. Yeah, I don't know. They make these carbon fiber, photography ones. I just, as long as it doesn't, as it holds my easel, that's really all I care. It's and telescopes down. Oh yeah, so we just got back from 5 nights in the Eastern Sierras, and then I've also dislocated my other kneecap in playing sports. And the guy goes, the doctor, you're not predisposed to get hurt. You were just unlucky twice. And he goes, I don't even have to tell you to be careful because you just will be. But yeah, we're spending 5 nights out there. We're used for the people that ride. That's that's one way to get up there. I always hike, and we hire a cook. We have pack mules. It's kind of decadent way to go, but it would be hard to get your art gear up there if you didn't, and all your food and clothing and stuff. So we've been doing this. I think it's our 18th trip now. It's funny just been up there. I could have just worked without the photograph and just worked off my sketch, just because, once you've been there and you've been looking at this scene for a while, but it is always nice to have it in front of you just to refer back to little things. And this always happens. You're working away and you get to some areas and you're concentrating on something, and you can't just talk the entire time. You got to have some time to reflect and concentrate.
Question. Do you paint near Bridgeport or Mono Lake?
We go past Bridgeport. June Lakes is a great place to paint. I've explored there only once before, so that would, virtually no. What was the other place? Oh,
Bridgeport or Mono Lake?
Mono Lake. I wouldn't find as much to paint. I'm sure the lake itself is interesting, but I have not painted there. So this color is kind of tricky. It's a gray color, but I want it to be a little bit on the warm side. So there's a little orange, a little yellow orange. I put a little alizarin crimson, a little king's blue. And I'm looking for a rich, warm gray. It's cool because where we've gone, I don't know how many of you know the landscape artist, but Edgar Payne painted up there quite a bit. And it's neat to stand where he did, or Ansel Adams, or John Muir hiked a lot in these areas. And it's cool to think that he's basically seeing they were seeing the same things that we did.
All at once, different layers. That's kind of how you're working right now. Your first layer, you kind of block everything in. Next layer, you give a little bit more detail. And the last layer, you put it in the practice.
Yeah, thanks. I have a friend who, and I can't work this way, or I don't work this way. He'll just finish one thing completely. And yet in plein air stuff like painting the clouds, realizing they're moving too fast, I'm going to paint those entirely. But he would always just paint. He'd finish every little area and just basically go square inch by square inch. And it worked for him. And that's the one thing with art. There are rules that are really good to follow, but if doing a sketch is great, it works for me. And for a lot of people, it's either a forgotten or neglected step that really could help. But some people don't need it. And some people lose their creativity by being stymied by doing a process and then, trying to reproduce it on a larger scale. I get when it doesn't work for everybody. Good. Trying to get a little lighter edge on this top left side of this rock outcropping. Typically, my brush strokes in the shadow areas will go a lot of different direction. When I get to the light side, I'm following the form. These cracks and ridges here are vertical. And so that's what I'm trying to paint in that direction. Or the ground plane. If there's grasses, if this section is at a diagonal, I'm going to paint it this way. But then I'll probably take some brush work and go vertically to indicate some grasses. So I don't know where I got that from. I didn't create it or invent it, but that's been something important to me to have the light side describe the direction of what I'm painting. Remember Baron's story? Yeah. So this is one of my favorite artists at the academy, or when he was a instructor there. And I walked into Bradley Hall, and it's this big place. He's got two models, and it's just chaos. He's got Metallica on the, some heavy metal music blaring. He's got strobe lights, and he's this German guy with this big, deep voice. 90 miles an hour. I want you drawing at 90 miles an hour. And it's just got this music going on. It's like, this just sounds awful. And I'm watching some of my students draw, and I think, this is a headache. This is a headache. And this is a 6-hour class. So I'm in there about 15 minutes, and okay, that's about it. And he turns the music off, and he puts classical music back on. And he tells the models, slow down, stop, hold your pose. And he goes, now I want you to draw at 30 miles an hour. And it's like, ding, ding, ding. Now I get it. And it's like, he wanted you to get warmed up. He wanted you to do the gestures and whatnot. But the slow down part was, now it's time to draw the hands and face, the important parts of what you're doing. And the same thing, I feel that sometimes, when I'm painting, okay, get this in, get the light's changing. You've got to capture all this. Now that you have it, it's like, slow down and get these nuances in. And I always remember that, even though it wasn't supposed to pertain to, plein air painting, why not? Yeah.
Best.
Yeah. But these, I have actually slowed down over the years. This is, another thing that came from Matt Smith's class is, and this just gave me permission. He goes, even when I'm doing a 6x8 painting, it's a finished painting. And it's like, okay, he's not being rushed. It's you have time. So I don't get as many paintings. I'm still efficient. I'm still one of the more, I get a lot of paintings done on these trips or at a plein air event. Not as many as I used to, but I'm still quick enough. But that's not my goal. Is not to get, I got 4 done today. I did a 5th painting. I did, but how many of them were good? Did you really do, your best work, or were you counting, how many paintings you got done? It's funny, not this particular scene, but of course I can't find it now, but use this one. So somebody might really have turquoise or green, this one thing to have it in the light here, but people will look at a hillside or a mountainside and they'll automatically be painting green because there's trees on the hillside. And what color are trees? They're green. But if you go like this or have a viewfinder and isolate the color, you'd be surprised how blue the distant hillsides can be. And so sometimes they may get the right value, but they're not seeing the blueness. And again, if I'm looking at reference material, there's really very little. I see a little bit of blue gray in here, but there's not a huge jump in the shadow area here and here because it's a photograph. I didn't expose this for the light and shadow side. I just am taking a quick reference pick. This I'm pretty critical about in my work, this edge work here and what these sky holes are. And sky holes can be very telling about the texture, the looseness, and a tree isn't just, there's individual foliage and leaves and branches and whatnot. And you want to be able to indicate that. Where it's key is around the edges. The more sky holes you put in the middle of a tree, the wimpier and less massive the tree feels. So I'm really critical of trying to to stay away from the middle of the tree to add these sky holes. And it's also keeping this form very telling and very interesting. I'm sure this is key in a lot of art classes. You do a contour drawing, and you're supposed to draw the model or something, and the teacher might say, well, we're going to have you do it left-handed. You're, oh God, left-handed, but well, what if you ever got injured? but sometimes you slow down and you're surprised at how good you can do something because you really are observing rather than guessing. Or the blind contour drawing, where you put a piece of paper over something and you're drawing without looking at what you're painting or what you're seeing. And yeah, you may get off with some things, but sometimes you lift it up and you realize, wow, it's pretty good. Yeah, the shoulder went down or something, but it's training you to observe more. And that's, for me, when I'm teaching, that's one thing I'm trying to get, if it's you guys, to observe just a little bit more, not just guess that this is what it should be or what it looks like. When did you really study it? A really key thing to help you, and this can be in whatever you're doing, if you're comparing something, let's say you're drawing from a photo or from life, a still life or a model, you put something down, ask yourself, is it lighter or darker than what you see? Is it warmer or cooler than what you see? Is it more intense or brighter or duller? And sometimes because I've been doing this a long time, I don't think I'm thinking about it, but I am all the time. You put something down, you go, is that the same green as your hat? And when I'm first starting something, I'm not thinking you have a green hat. You have a number 5 or number 6 value hat. Now it's a green hat. It's now a 5 or 6 value hat. And I can mix up, it's just much easier to mix up a color when you're thinking of that. And you put that down, you go, okay, is it warmer or cooler than what I see? And those are, as you get better and you do it more out of rote, but I guarantee you'll be thinking about it. It's also really important to have people look at your work, have paint with friends, have critique sessions. Those are all really good ways to stay, to get feedback. And it's great if you can, look at your own work and go, no, this is what it needs. It's, self-critiquing is very good, but I'll give you an example. I was at Carmel a number of years ago, and I put out my work and asked my buddy to take a look at it, and he goes, well, that's your best piece, and these other 3 are good. He goes, what's in the box over there? And I go, oh, it's just an 8x10. And he goes, take it out. And I took it out and he goes, well, that's your best one. It was a little, and I go, it's an 8x10. And it won second place at Carmel 7-8 years ago. So I'm like, oh, Kevin, I owe you a beer now. But it's, and my wife is really big with that. She would, I'd call her, I'll send her some of my stuff, but she'll say, God, if you're at these events, you got to find somebody that, you know, you can help this person critique. You can be their eyes too. And it's just really good feedback to, because there's all kinds of, it's not just entering a show, but it's sometimes, again, we don't see a tangent. We don't see a, you know, an odd color, you know, a shape that may not be working, or it might be, gosh, I just love what you know, keep it loose like this. Really? I was gonna tighten it up, and you don't need to. Getting there. Oh yeah. Remember, we went to see a demo by Kevin McPherson, who's a wonderful artist. And I'm sitting in the front row here, and he did a whole black and white painting first. And then he started painting color over it. It's like, you know, I lean over to my buddy. Are you going to say anything? Oh, you say something. Kevin, Mr. McPherson, I have a question for you. How come you have black underneath there? Aren't you, when you start mixing your color, aren't you going to pull up the colors? And he goes, no, I'm, first off, I'm doing a demo for you guys. So he says, I do this occasionally, but I paint fairly directly. But he says, I want you to see these values, and I want you to see when I match. If I have a gray, I'm matching that gray. And if it's dark, I'm matching that, you know, that blackish color, but I'm also not scrubbing and then pulling, you know, I'm laying down this color, and okay, that makes sense. So I'm just going around the whole painting and scanning at what I still haven't gone into this light side of the grasses in here. It's a little bit bright, but value is okay. So if this were a bigger area and I wanted to add some nuances of color, some orange, if the grasses are starting to die out, or they represent flowers of some sort, little, forget what grows up there, Indian paintbrush. I'm mixing this all out of the same color, out of the same field. It's okay to make color shifts, but not value shifts, so that this lays flat a little bit more. It's when you really jump and you have all different values in there, then these things become a little bit more accents and not jumping out at you color wise or more than that value wise. Just to soften some of these edges and indicate a little bit of grasses. It's not a big area, but sometimes I'll get a really flat area of my brush. You know, just dab it a few times. You can always, you know, scrape it out, redo the rock, the value behind the rock. It's not what I meant to do, but I mean, that's exactly what I meant to do. Sorry. Let's say you bought the whole brush, you can use the back end too to sketch with or do whatever.
Joan, turn your mic off, please. So we can get a picture back. And
Yeah, turn your lights off.
What?
And can you get Paula Margarita too while you're at it? I'll be here for 30 more minutes. Coming together?
Yes.
Okay, good. I want somebody to say, no, you've got a long way to go. You have some real issues. Do you remember Bert Silverman coming to the Academy of Art?
Yeah.
So this great portraiture and figurative painter came to Academy, and he's got let's say an hour to do a demo. And these are all fun stories, but this is a really great art lesson to me. And he has this great looking young African-American looking guy, bright red shirt, and they gave him a lime green lunch pails. Like, those look great together. And he goes, okay, sit down and, you know, just relax and do some poses. And he's doing, it would be like me. I can't pose. I don't know how to, you know, I want to do the big, you know, muscular stuff. And Bert Silverman paints these really relaxed characters. And he's going, no, it's not working. Stand up. No, sit down. No, go over here. Go over to lean on this and stuff. And it's just like, you know, you got 45 more minutes to go and you haven't done a thing. You haven't put a brush down. And finally he goes, wait a minute. That's it. Okay. Lift up your wrist, put it over the lunch pail and just relax it. Don't tighten it up, just relax it. And he goes, that's it. And he just, bam, bam, bam. He got to the red shirt. You know, it's like 5 or 6 brush strokes. You know, he spent a little bit of time on the hand. He really rendered the face beautifully. And I just thought it was really cool. He just wasn't, he wasn't afraid about the time, but he just wasn't going to do a boring demo and go, it was really important for him to pose the model the way he wants. And the same thing, I'm may sell this or whatever, but I'm not going to let it go unless I like it. I'm amazed that one that I did so badly. It's like I wasn't going to give that away. I'm not proud of that painting. You still, as an artist, you still want to do really good work. But I thought that was just a great lesson in really being adamant about what he was going to paint. Okay, Terry Mira is a great friend, great painter, and he used to paint almost exclusively as a kind of a tonalist, which means pretty muted, understated colors, and even his skies were pretty grayish. And he goes, almost always I clean my palette and put out fresh paint because it's really easy to muddy up your skies. And he goes, that's when I switched, or I either clean my brush or get a different one. So I've learned that from him, that it's when I put this in, I wasn't too worried, but it got muddy pretty quickly, and it didn't take much to touch the purple or whatever color I had in there. So I'm going to go back to and just be careful to get a cleaner color out of that. Terp. This, whatever piece of sculpture that it looks like now, is my $2 tin cup. And about 10 years ago, I was up on this Granite Group trip, did my painting, and I came back and I packed up everything and went to my next area. Where's my wonderful tin cup? And couldn't find it. It's fine. I can use something else. 2 years later, we're back. Anybody have a paper towel? Now I need one more or two more. 2 years later, I go back and I'm setting up to paint, and I go, what's that silver thing on the rock over there? And there's this precious little $2 tin cup. So now I don't ever want to lose it because it has survived. Thank you. Yeah, they go in yeah, we pack all that stuff out. I'm really, I think like any artist, uh-oh, that's the show. Oh, here it is. There's something right here too. I'm back. But I think the camera's probably off now. Is it? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, that's the most important thing of all in art. Did you all get that? Ha 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 ha. That was great, wasn't it? Of course, you had to be here. Yeah. So I'm going to paint a little bit more. I mixed up just a more pure, less dirty color. And again, I'm going to kind of soften this edge back here because these are distant mountains. Does the audience on video want to bid on this painting? And see how high we can go, or? I'm stuck with the thousands of you in here now. This, I would, this is $150 if anybody wants to buy it. And, okay. Yippee, I'm gonna take my wife out for. Thank you. So, no, it's, so George, a friend of mine took a workshop with George Contos, and he's a very famous artist. And he does a really fast painting, and he can demand whatever he wants for his paintings. And he did this painting, and he goes, kind of like this one. This is $8,000. It's like an hour and a half. And somebody in the class goes, I'll take it. And it's like, obviously they have money. It's like, holy cow. So he paints on it a little bit more and says, you know what? This is really a better painting. I thought, I'm going to charge $12,000. And the woman goes, I'll take it. Same. And he goes, no, I can't do that. I said 8,000. That's what it's going to be. He goes, but I don't have anything to write it down with. Can I use your pencil? And so he takes this pencil and scrolls. He's got paint all over it. Scrolls his name and gives it back. And then the person goes, anybody want this pencil for $1,000? And everybody laughed except for the person that bought the painting for $8,000. It's like, holy cow, 8,000. And I have a great friend, Carol Marine, and I go, Carol, what do you charge for your demos? And she goes, like 100, 150. She goes, the people already paid a lot for the class. It's not a finished painting. It's, some people do really, really finished works, for demos, but if people want to buy my paintings, that's fine, and they're still discounted, but not the demos. So I want these clouds to be pretty soft edge. I don't love what I just did there, but I think I can fix it. I want them to be kind of soft edged, as if these are kind of blowing in or blowing out, and they're a little bit wispy on the edges. I went to the very first Sonoma Plein Air, whatever it was, 15 years ago. And my wife was working at Pixar, and they had a little booth, and she would go up after work and do some small little studies. And I went to the gala and fell in love with the work. And I talked to a couple people, and I said, what did you paint first? And he goes, well, I painted this one area that I knew was going to change the most. And that's so cool. I never would have thought of that, because I was always working from photo reference. And I fell in love with the work. The next day I went home, I bought a set of oil paints, of water-based oil paints. I hadn't painted in oil since college, like 20 years before that. And I stopped being an illustrator, and I started being a plein air painter. And I knew how to design. I knew how to compose things. I didn't know much about landscapes and the lighting and stuff. And I certainly didn't know that much about oils. And it didn't take me that long to get caught up, but there was a learning curve there. But that's how I got into plein air painting, was really just an inspiring overnight sensation, or whatever you want to say. I'll put a couple little indications of some tree trunks in here. And I think I'm going to be done. A yellow ochre color. You could probably do anything. Tim Horn and Jennifer McChristian do use a pink color, and it's just a color coming through because I paint so warm. I like that yellow orange to come through. It's also, I'm also using something called fast matte, and the paint has a little grip to it. And the linen surface, the paint slides just a little bit. That might be a nuance some of you might not feel, but I do. And I like how it grips just a little bit more. It wears out the brushes a little bit faster. But it's a neat surface to work on. It's a paint by Gamblin, and it's an oil paint. It just says fast matte on it. It dries faster, but I just use it as basically as a primer.
Is it a color?
You can get all different colors. So I can't find white anymore. I don't know why, of all colors. But I have an ochre color, and then I'll use white with it, any kind of white in it. Yeah. I have it made. Yeah, yeah. I don't like canvas that's stretched canvas. I don't like how it bounces. I like it being stiff on here. I have a wet box carrier that slides, depending on how thick they are. I can either put 3 or 6 of them in there, which is great. It protects them. I think I'm done. Good. Thank you. Thanks to thousands of you way back there with your binoculars and stuff that came here. Okay, I do have a workshop coming up. Do you know the dates? October 28 and 29. It's going to be here around here. I think we're going to Stowe Lake, and I forget the other location. I'm going to teach entirely different things than I just taught here, and I'm going to do it with a lot of humor. But I also spend a lot of time individually, and I really try to help and find out. I know it's just a 2-day workshop, but find out what you are interested in and why, what makes you tick, and then try to give you some suggestions of obviously things to work on, but maybe some other artists to look at and stuff. I mean, I have fun, but I'm serious about it too. I just do it with a smile on my face. But I hope you can, if you can make it. Yeah, it's on the website. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. And then I do have, it's not on my website yet. I think I'm going to post it on Monday. I'm going to, where am I going? Portugal next year in May for a 5-day workshop. Spouses can go too. We have activities. I have never been there. A friend of mine has put this whole thing together. He and his wife are going to be there. They both speak Portuguese. They've got 5 or 6 locations that they've already scouted out. They've been there numerous times, and I can't wait to go. It'll be an adventure for everybody, including me. So something to think about. Christmas is coming up, right? No, whoops. Any other questions?
You did get a couple of thank yous from the thousands of people.
Thousands of people, and I got 2.
Yeah.
Thank you to everybody in television out there for joining us on a weekend, on a 4-day weekend, holiday weekend. Thank you, everybody. And I will sign this. Do you want me to unplug?